Sierra Carter is quiet, disciplined, and never looks for trouble. But when three bullies tie a rope and hang it in front of her locker, they didn't know they were making the biggest mistake of their lives. Because Sierra isn't just any girl. She's a karate black belt, trained since she was 6, and her father is a recently retired Navy SEAL who knows exactly how to fight back. But this isn't just about payback. It's about a school that protects bullies, a sheriff who buries complaints, and a system built to silence girls like Sierra. When the administration tries to blame her instead of her attackers, Sierra decides she's done staying quiet. So the question is, what happens when the girl they tried to break is the one who exposes them all? Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine streets of Oak Ridge Heights as Dante Carter's black SUV rolled to a stop in front of Ridgeview Middle School. The sprawling brick building loomed ahead, its manicured lawns and spotless windows reflecting wealth and privilege. Sierra Carter sat quietly in the passenger seat, her freshly done braids neat against her shoulders, her backpack clutched close. Dante turned off the engine and faced his daughter. His calm, steady presence filled the car, the same presence that had guided countless military operations. "Remember what we always say before training?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Sierra nodded, her eyes fixed on the school entrance where students streamed in, nearly all of them white. "Control your mind, control your actions," she recited. The words were as familiar as breathing after 8 years of karate training. "That's right." Dante's dark eyes held wisdom earned from years of service. "You're walking into a different kind of challenge here. But you've got something many of these kids don't: discipline." Sierra adjusted her simple blue sweater, smoothing invisible wrinkles. "I know, Dad. Just like you taught me in the dojo. Observe first, react second." "Exactly." Dante reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "You're my warrior princess. Not because you can throw a perfect roundhouse kick, but because you know when not to." Students passed by their car, some casting curious glances at the new faces. Sierra took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders just like she did before stepping onto the mat for competition. "I've got your back," Dante continued. "Always. But I also know you can handle yourself. You're stronger than anyone in that building knows." Sierra managed a small smile. "Thanks, Dad." She reached for the door handle, then paused. "Did you feel like this when you were the only black SEAL in your unit?" Dante's expression softened. "Every day at first, but I let my actions speak louder than their assumptions. That's how we change minds, through excellence, not anger." Sierra stepped out of the car, adjusting her backpack. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and privilege. She walked through the main entrance, keeping her movements measured and calm, just as she'd been taught. The hallways buzzed with typical middle school energy, kids laughing, lockers slamming, teachers herding students toward classrooms. But Sierra felt the subtle shift in atmosphere as she passed. Conversations paused. Eyes followed. Whispers started. She found her locker and focused on the combination lock, blocking out the stairs. A group of girls nearby fell silent as she approached, then hurried away. Sierra kept her face neutral, remembering her father's words about control. The morning classes passed in a blur of introductions and awkward silences. No one sat next to her in homeroom. In math, her perfect answers were met with surprised looks from the teacher. During lunch, she sat alone, using the time to observe her new surroundings. It was during the passing period before last class that she first noticed them. 3 boys lounging against the lockers, radiating the easy confidence of those who've never faced consequences. The tallest one, with perfectly styled brown hair and expensive shoes, caught her eye and smirked. Sierra kept walking, but her trained senses stayed alert. As she passed, Their voices carried clearly in the hallway. "Check out the new girl's hair," the tall one said, just loud enough to be heard. "Looks like rope from the hardware store." That was Troy Hadley. She'd heard his name called in history class. The second boy, Chase Dunham, laughed too loudly. "Maybe she's trying to start a new fashion trend." His designer clothes and carefully casual stance screamed follower, not leader. The third boy, stockier and quieter, just watched with cold eyes. Ryder Keene, she'd learn later, son of the biggest real estate developer in town. "Bet she doesn't even wash it," Troy continued, his voice dripping with mock concern. "My dad says those people have different hygiene standards." More laughter. Sierra kept walking, her steps steady and unhurried. Her fingers didn't clench. Her shoulders didn't tense. Years of training had taught her that true power lies in restraint. She rounded the corner and paused at her locker, listening to their continued comments with the same focused attention she used to study opponents before a match. Their words were carefully chosen, coded enough to maintain deniability, but clear in their intent. Sierra organized her books with deliberate calm, noting their names in her mind, cataloging their faces and voices. Her father had taught her that information was often the best weapon. So she observed, she remembered, and she maintained her dignity. The bell rang, sending students scurrying to their final classes. Sierra closed her locker softly, shouldered her bag, and walked away from the boys' laughter with her head high. She was her father's daughter, a warrior who knew that sometimes the strongest move was no move at all. The cafeteria buzzed with the usual middle school chaos, plastic trays clattering, wrapped sandwiches rustling, and dozens of conversations overlapping. Sierra sat alone at the end of a long table, her packed lunch neatly arranged before her. The food was simple but carefully prepared. Grilled chicken, brown rice, and steamed vegetables, just like her father made when he was watching his nutrition during SEAL training. She could feel the stares from the table of girls nearby, their whispers barely contained behind manicured hands. Sierra kept her movements measured and deliberate, the way she did during kata practice. Each bite was careful, each movement controlled. "Hey, you're Sierra, right?" Sierra looked up to find Madison Reynolds standing beside her table, designer purse clutched close. Madison's blonde hair was perfectly styled, her clothes carefully chosen to look casually expensive. Behind her, a group of girls watched with poorly hidden smirks. "Yes," Sierra answered simply, keeping her voice neutral. Madison shifted her weight, glancing back at her friends. "We were wondering if you wanted to sit with us." The invitation came out more like a question, her tone suggesting it wasn't entirely her idea. Sierra studied Madison's face, reading the subtle tells just as her father had taught her. The slight tension around her eyes, the way she kept looking back at her friends, all signs pointed to this being some kind of setup. But Sierra also remembered her father's words about always taking the high road. "Thank you," Sierra said politely, gathering her lunch. She walked to their table with the same quiet confidence she carried onto the competition mat. The girls shifted uncomfortably as she sat down, creating a noticeable gap on either side of her. Sierra could feel the tension building, like the moment before a sparring match began. "So," one girl, Ashley, drawled, "What's for lunch?" Sierra opened her container, revealing the carefully packed meal. The reaction was immediate. Exaggerated gagging sounds and theatrical coughing. "Oh my God! What is that smell?" Madison pinched her nose, no longer trying to hide her disdain. "Smells like someone left their gym clothes in their locker too long," Ashley added, earning high-pitched giggles from the group. "Maybe it's her hair," another girl stage whispered. "My mom says they use all kinds of weird oils." Sierra's hands remained steady as she closed her lunch container. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. Your opponent's weakness shows in their need to attack. Your strength shows in how you respond. She stood up smoothly, her movements controlled and dignified. Thank you for the invitation, she said, her voice clear and calm. The girl's laughter faltered slightly at her composure. Walking back to her original seat, Sierra felt their stares, but didn't give them the satisfaction of looking back. She reopened her lunch and continued eating, her posture perfect, her face serene. Inside, she was counting breaths, the way she did during difficult training sessions. The rest of the school day passed in a blur of sideways glances and whispered comments. Sierra maintained her focus, answering questions in class when called upon, taking careful notes, keeping her movements measured and precise. At home that evening, Sierra sat across from her father at their kitchen table. Dante had prepared a healthy dinner, just like always. Grilled fish, quinoa, and roasted vegetables. He believed in feeding both body and spirit with equal care. How was school today? He asked, his deep voice carrying the same steady calm it always did. Sierra pushed a piece of fish around her plate. Fine, she said quietly, not meeting his eyes. Dante watched her carefully, his years of reading situations and people picking up on the subtle signs of distress. Just fine? Yeah. Sierra took a small bite, chewing slowly. Nothing special. Her father didn't push, but his dark eyes held concern. He'd seen too much in his career not to recognize when someone was carrying a weight they didn't want to share. After dinner, Sierra retreated to the garage they'd converted into a home dojo. The space was simple but functional. Training mats covering the floor, a few pieces of equipment along the walls, and a small shrine in the corner with her belt display. She changed into her GI, the white uniform crisp and clean. Tying her black belt with practiced movements, Sierra centered herself on the mat and began her kata. Each move was precise, each stance perfect. Her breathing fell into the familiar rhythm as she moved through the forms she'd practiced thousands of times. Punch, block, turn, strike. The movements were a meditation, a way to process emotions without words. Her father had taught her that kata wasn't just about memorizing moves. It was about finding peace in precision, strength in silence. As she moved through the complex series of techniques, Sierra remained focused and quiet. The garage was silent except for the whisper of her guy and her controlled breathing. She didn't notice her father watching briefly from the doorway, his expression a mixture of pride and concern, before quietly stepping away. Sierra walked down the hallway toward her locker, her steps measured and controlled like always. The morning crowd parted around her, but something felt different today. The usual whispers had been replaced by an eerie silence. Then she saw it. A thick rope hung from her locker door, twisted into an unmistakable shape. A noose. Below it, a piece of paper fluttered like a wounded bird. Know your place, written in thick black marker. The hallway went completely quiet. Sierra felt time slow down, just like it did during tournament matches when everything narrowed to a single point of focus. Her hand didn't shake as she pulled out her phone and took a clear picture of the noose and sign. Click. Another angle. Click. Evidence secured, just as her father had taught her. "Oh my God!" Mrs. Thompson, her English teacher, rushed forward. Her face had gone pale as she fumbled with a pair of scissors from her classroom. This is horrible!" Sierra stood perfectly still, her breathing controlled. From the corner of her eye, she could see Troy, Chase, and Ryder standing by the water fountain, trying to hide their smirks. Their confidence radiated across the hallway. The untouchable sons of Ridgeview's most powerful men. Principal Matthews appeared, his expensive loafers squeaking against the freshly waxed floor. "Everyone to class! Now!" he barked, then lowered his voice. "Sierra, please come with me to my office." As Mrs. Thompson cut down the noose with trembling hands, Sierra followed the principal through the now emptying hallway. She kept her spine straight, her chin up, her face composed. She could hear her father's voice in her head. "Never let them see you rattled. Your calm is your armor." Principal Matthews's office was designed to impress. Dark wood furniture, framed diplomas, a view of the manicured school grounds. He settled into his leather chair while Sierra sat perfectly straight in the visitor's seat, her hands folded in her lap. "Now, Sierra," he began, his tone carefully measured, "I want you to know we take these kinds of incidents very seriously." Sierra met his gaze steadily. "It was a noose, Mr. Matthews, with a threatening message." He shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, well, sometimes students don't understand the historical implications of their actions. I'm sure whoever did this meant it as a poorly conceived prank." "A prank," Sierra repeated, her voice flat. "We'll conduct a thorough investigation," he assured her, shuffling some papers on his desk. "But these things can be complicated, without direct evidence." "I have pictures," Sierra said calmly, holding up her phone. Principal Matthews blinked. "Ah, yes. Well, that's good. But we still need to be careful about making accusations without absolute proof of who was responsible." Sierra noticed how he wouldn't quite meet her eyes now. She remembered her father explaining how people in power often tried to minimize problems they didn't want to deal with. "May I call my parents?" she asked. Of course. He pushed his office phone toward her, but Sierra was already pulling out her cell phone. Her father answered on the first ring. "Sierra?" "Dad," she said, her voice steady. "Someone hung a noose on my locker this morning, with a threatening message." The silence on the other end was heavy with controlled anger. "Are you safe?" "Yes. I'm in the principal's office." "Stay there. I'm coming." Principal Matthews was already shaking his head. "That's really not necessary." "My father's coming," Sierra stated simply. It wasn't a request. The next 20 minutes passed in tense silence. Sierra sat perfectly still, her posture reflecting years of martial arts training. Principal Matthews made several phone calls, his voice low and urgent. When Dante Carter arrived, his presence filled the room. He wore simple civilian clothes, jeans and a dark button-down shirt, but carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of a warrior. His eyes took in everything, analyzing threats and exits with practiced efficiency. "Sierra," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Show me." She held up her phone, displaying the photos she'd taken. Dante studied them carefully, his expression unchanging. But Sierra could feel the tension in his hand where it rested on her shoulder. Later that evening, in their kitchen, Sierra pulled up the photos again. The noose looked even more menacing on the small screen, the threatening message more stark. Dante stood at the counter, his hands pressed flat against the surface, studying the images. His face was like stone, but his eyes burned with a controlled fire Sierra had rarely seen. "They just declared war," he said, his voice quiet but filled with certainty. Sierra met her father's gaze, feeling the strength of generations flowing through her veins. "Then, they're not ready for who we are." The next morning, Sierra and Dante sat in the waiting area outside Principal Whitaker's office. Sierra watched her father's hands, steady, relaxed, resting on his knees. He'd taught her that true power wasn't in showing anger, but in controlling it. "Mr. Carter, Sierra, please come in," Principal Whitaker called, his voice carrying forced cheerfulness. They entered the office where Mrs. Hayes, the school counselor, also sat waiting. Sierra noticed how the principal's desk created a barrier between them, how he'd positioned himself like a judge about to deliver a verdict. First, Let me say how seriously we take any incident that makes our students feel uncomfortable. Whitaker began, shuffling some papers on his desk. Uncomfortable. Dante's voice was quiet, but carried the weight of steel. A noose isn't about comfort, Mr. Whitaker. It's a death threat with historical significance. Whitaker cleared his throat. Yes, well, after speaking with several students, we believe this was meant as a poorly conceived prank. Sierra felt her father's energy shift beside her, like a tiger coiling before a strike. But his voice remained measured. A prank, he repeated. Kids sometimes don't think through the implications of their actions. Mrs. Hayes jumped in, her smile too bright. We've identified the students involved, and they'll receive 1 day of in-school suspension. 1 day, Sierra said, speaking for the first time, for a death threat. Now, Sierra. Mrs. Hayes leaned forward, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. I know this is upsetting, but we need to take the high road here. Show them you're the bigger person. Dante's hand found Sierra's shoulder, steadying her. What evidence did you find? He asked Whitaker. The principal shifted uncomfortably. We conducted interviews. Security cameras? Dante interrupted. The hallway has 3 of them. I counted. Unfortunately, there was a technical issue that morning. The footage isn't available. Sierra watched her father's face remain perfectly calm, even as she felt his fingers tighten slightly on her shoulder. Convenient, he said. Mr. Carter. Whitaker leaned back in his chair, his tone becoming defensive. I understand you're upset, but these are good kids from respected families. They've admitted it was foolish, and they're being punished appropriately. Good kids, Dante repeated. Would you call it foolish if someone hung a noose on your daughter's locker? The principal's face flushed. That's not. Or is it only foolish when it happens to certain students? Mrs. Hayes jumped in again. Sierra, honey, the boys feel terrible. Sometimes the best response is forgiveness. Take the high road. Stop saying that, Sierra said quietly but firmly. The high road isn't pretending threats don't matter. Whitaker's expression hardened. We've made our decision. The boys will serve their suspension today. I suggest we all move forward and put this unfortunate incident behind us. Dante stood slowly, his movement deliberate. Mr. Whitaker, my daughter showed you respect by bringing this to your attention through proper channels. You've shown us exactly how much that respect is worth. Is that a threat, Mr. Carter? No, sir. Just an observation. Dante's voice was perfectly controlled. Sierra, let's go. They walked out of the office in silence, their footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Sierra could hear Mrs. Hayes calling after them about choosing kindness and being the bigger person, but she didn't look back. That evening, Sierra sat at their kitchen table, pushing her dinner around her plate. They're not going to help us, are they? Dante placed his fork down carefully. No, they're not. People like Whitaker. They protect the system that protects them. So what do we do? Her father's eyes met hers. You remember what I taught you about taking down a larger opponent? Sierra nodded. Patience, position, pressure points. Justice is the same way, Dante said. It doesn't come from people like Whitaker. It comes from discipline, evidence, and exposure. We take the long road. The boys are laughing about it, Sierra said. They were smirking in the cafeteria when I walked past. Let them laugh. Pride comes before the fall. Dante pushed his chair back and went to his office, returning with a fresh notebook. He placed it in front of Sierra. Start keeping track. Times, dates, witnesses, everything they say, everything they do. Build the case they don't think we're smart enough to make. Sierra opened the notebook, its blank pages promising something like hope. She wrote the date at the top of the first page, then began listing what she'd observed. Troy's whispered comments in math class. Chase's deliberate shoulder check in the hallway. Ryder's snickering when she raised her hand in history. "We're not just fighting them," Dante said, watching her write. "We're fighting a system that wants us to stay quiet and take the high road." Sierra looked up from her notes. "Then we'll fight both." Sierra stepped through Ridgeview Middle School's front doors the next morning, her father's words echoing in her mind. The tiny microphone clipped inside her collar felt like armor. Invisible, but powerful. Dante had shown her how to use it that morning, his hands steady as he detached it. "Remember," he'd said, "evidence is stronger than anger." The hallway seemed longer today. Students parted around her like water, some averting their eyes, others staring too long. Sierra kept her pace steady, her breathing controlled like she did during kata practice. The microphone picked up every footstep, every whisper. Troy Hadley leaned against his locker as she approached, his smirk wide and cruel. "Hey, rope girl," he called, just loud enough for nearby students to hear. Sierra's hand tightened on her backpack strap, but she kept walking. "What's wrong?" Chase taunted from across the hall. "Cat got your tongue?" He made a pulling gesture with his hand, mimicking a noose tightening. Several students gasped, but no one said anything. Sierra felt her heart pound but kept her face neutral. Inside her mind, she catalogued every detail. Time, place, witnesses. The microphone captured it all. In first period math, Ryder sat behind her, occasionally making quiet, choking sounds. Sierra focused on her equations, her pencil moving steadily across the paper. When she raised her hand to answer a question, he whispered, "Careful, might need a rope ladder to get that high." The teacher, Mrs. Peterson, frowned slightly but said nothing. Sierra answered the question correctly, her voice clear and unwavering. She noted Mrs. Peterson's inaction in her mental log. Between classes, Madison, the girl who'd set her up at lunch days before, approached with fake concern. "I just want you to know," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "I think what they did was totally wrong. Even if you don't really fit in here." Sierra met her eyes. "Thank you for your concern," she said, each word measured and precise. The microphone caught Madison's uncomfortable laugh as she retreated. At lunch, Sierra sat alone again, but this time she positioned herself where she could observe the entire cafeteria. She watched Troy and his friends holding court at their table, noticed how teachers walked past without commenting on their loud jokes about hanging around and swinging by later. In her notebook, Sierra documented each incident with military precision, just as her father had taught her. Time, location, witnesses, direct quotes. The growing list felt like building a case, gathering ammunition for a battle they didn't know was coming. During gym class, the whispers grew bolder. "Wonder if her dad taught her how to climb ropes," Chase said loudly, as they lined up for volleyball. "Bet it runs in the family." Sierra served the ball with perfect form, the satisfying smack echoing through the gym. She remembered her father's words about power, not in showing it, but in knowing you have it. After school, Troy and his friends followed her to her locker, maintaining just enough distance to claim innocence. "Hey, rope girl," Ryder called. "Need help tying your shoes?" Sierra closed her locker carefully, checking that the camera hidden in her phone case captured their reflections in the metal door. She turned and walked away, her steps unhurried. "What? Too good to talk to us now?" Troy's voice carried down the hall. "Acting all high and mighty?" Sierra kept walking, each step measured, each breath controlled. The microphone recorded their laughter, their footsteps, their continued taunts until she reached the school exit. At home, in their garage dojo, Sierra changed into her GI while Dante reviewed the day's recordings. The familiar weight of her black belt centered her as she began warming up. "Good work," Dante said. setting down his laptop. "You captured everything clearly." He stood and moved to the center of the mat, assuming a ready stance. "Now, we train harder." Sierra mirrored his position, feeling the strength in her stance, the power in her core. The garage lights cast their shadows long across the floor. Father and daughter, teacher and student, warriors preparing. "They think silence is weakness," Dante said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "But you know better. You've got power they can't imagine." Sierra nodded, her body relaxing into the familiar forms as they began. Each movement was precise, controlled, a reminder of the strength that ran deeper than any taunt or threat could reach. The sound of their synchronized movements filled the garage, the whisper of fabric, the sharp exhale of breath, the solid impact of feet on the mat. This was their answer to hate: discipline, precision, and patience. Sierra stood in the girls' locker room, changing after PE class. The room was nearly empty. Most students had already left for their next period. She took her time, carefully folding her gym clothes, remembering her father's lessons about staying aware of her surroundings. Heavy footsteps approached from behind. Sierra tensed, recognizing the pattern of multiple people trying to walk quietly. She turned just as Troy, Chase, and Ryder rounded the corner into the changing area. "This is the girls' locker room," Sierra said calmly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The microphone hidden in her shirt captured everything. Troy's smirk widened. "Oh, we know. But see, we figured you needed a little physical education." He bounced a basketball between his hands, the hollow sound echoing off the metal lockers. "Yeah," Chase added, shifting to block the exit. "Some extra credit work." Sierra scanned the room, noting positions, distances, obstacles, just like her father taught her. 3 boys, 1 exit, 4 rows of lockers. No witnesses, exactly what they'd planned. "You should leave," Sierra warned, her voice low but firm. She kept her stance relaxed but ready, weight balanced on the balls of her feet. "Or what?" Ryder sneered. "Gonna cry to Daddy? Or maybe hang around after class?" Troy suddenly whipped the basketball at Sierra's head. She ducked smoothly, the ball crashing into the lockers behind her with a deafening bang. Her heart pounded, but her breathing remained controlled. "Nice moves," Troy taunted, taking a step closer. "But you can't dodge everything." Chase lunged forward, grabbing Sierra's wrist. "Got you now, rope gi." Sierra moved without hesitation. Years of training took over. She twisted her captured arm, using Chase's momentum against him. Her grip locked around his wrist, applying precise pressure to the nerve points. Chase's eyes widened in shock as she stepped past him, sweeping his legs while maintaining the wrist lock. He hit the floor hard, the impact forcing the air from his lungs. Sierra released him immediately, stepping back into a defensive stance. "What the hell?" Troy shouted, his face red with rage and embarrassment. Chase scrambled backward on the floor, cradling his wrist. "She attacked me. You all saw it." Ryder moved forward, fists clenched, but Sierra's steady gaze made him hesitate. The power dynamic had shifted, and they all felt it. "Miss Carter!" A sharp voice cut through the tension. "Mrs." Peterson stood in the doorway, her face twisted with shock and disapproval. "What is going on here?" "She attacked Chase," Troy pointed accusingly. "We were just coming to get our basketball, and she went crazy." "That's not true," Sierra said calmly. "They cornered me. They threw the ball at my head. Chase grabbed me first." Mrs. Peterson's eyes narrowed. "Boys, this is the girls' locker room. You shouldn't be in here." She paused, looking at Chase still on the floor. "But violence is never the answer, Miss Carter. Come with me to the principal's office. Now." Sierra gathered her things quietly, noting how quickly the boys' expressions changed from fear to triumph. They knew the system would protect them. Again. In Principal Whitaker's office, Sierra sat straight-backed in the hard plastic chair while he lectured about appropriate responses and school policy. Her recorded evidence of the attack was dismissed as irrelevant since she had escalated to violence. 3 days suspension, Whitaker announced, not meeting her eyes. We have zero tolerance for fighting, Miss Carter. I'm sure you understand. Sierra nodded once, her face carefully blank. I understand perfectly, sir. When Dante picked her up, his face was calm as she explained what happened. He listened without interrupting, his hands steady on the steering wheel. They're getting desperate, he said finally, trying to provoke you into making mistakes. But you didn't make a mistake, Sierra. You defended yourself with control and precision. But they're still winning, Sierra said, frustration finally cracking through her composure. They attacked me, and I'm the one getting punished. Dante pulled into their driveway and turned off the engine. No, they're losing. They just don't know it yet. He turned to face her. They wanted you to be the monster they imagine. Instead, you showed them discipline and skill. That scares them more than any violence could. Sierra met her father's steady gaze. What do we do now? Now? Dante's eyes held a familiar strategic gleam. They want to see the monster. Let's give them the truth instead. Dante sat at his home office desk, carefully typing out a formal email requesting Ridgeview Middle School's complete disciplinary policies, incident reporting procedures, and historical records of similar cases. His fingers moved with precision over the keyboard, each word chosen deliberately. Dear Principal Whitaker, he read aloud, double-checking his tone. In light of recent events involving my daughter Sierra Carter, I am formally requesting access to all relevant school policies regarding bullying, racial harassment, and disciplinary procedures. He included specific references to state education codes and public records laws. 20 years of military service had taught him the value of doing things by the book, at least at first. The response came faster than expected. His computer pinged with a new message just 30 minutes later. But when Dante opened it, his eyebrows rose slightly. Instead of a direct reply, he found himself looking at an email chain he clearly wasn't meant to see. From Principal Whitaker to Sheriff Hadley. CC Dante Carter. Subject: Situation at Ridgeview. Nolan, we need to discuss this military dad situation. Carter's asking for records now, getting too close to those old complaints we handled. Recommendations? Dante leaned forward, his expression hardening as he scrolled through the previous messages in the chain. Each new email revealed more of the web. From Sheriff Hadley to Principal Whitaker. Subject: Situation at Ridgeview. Ron, handle it like we always do. Bury it in paperwork. Say the records are sealed for student privacy. I'll make some calls if needed. This seal doesn't know how things work here yet. Another message popped up as Dante read, From Principal Whitaker to Sheriff Hadley. Subject: Situation at Ridgeview. His kids got that recording device. Could be trouble if she caught anything. Troy needs to back off for now. We can't risk exposure of the Anderson case from last year. Dante's jaw tightened. He opened a new tab and searched Anderson Case, Ridgeview. Nothing came up in the news, but he found a forum post about a black family leaving town suddenly last year after their son was involved in an incident at school. His phone buzzed. A text from Sierra. Dad, 3 more kids want to talk to you. They say it happened to them too. Dante stood up and paced his office, mind working through scenarios like mission planning. This wasn't just about Sierra anymore. This was systematic. The sheriff and principal had been covering up racist incidents for years. forcing families to leave through intimidation and bureaucratic manipulation. He needed someone who could dig deeper, someone with resources and reach, someone who understood both sides of this fight. Dante picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the name, Nia Reynolds. They'd served together in his last deployment, her as a combat medic, him as team leader. Now she was making waves as an investigative reporter for the city paper, specializing in exposing institutional corruption. The phone rang 3 times before her familiar voice answered. "Carter? This is a surprise. How's civilian life treating you?" "Nia," Dante said, his voice carrying the same tone he'd used during mission briefings. "I need your help. Got time to meet?" "For you? Always. What's going on?" Dante glanced at the email chain still open on his computer. "Rather show you in person. It's about my daughter's school, and the sheriff, and years of covered-up racism." There was a pause on the line. When Nia spoke again, her voice had shifted to what the team used to call her mission mode. "Text me the address. I'll bring my laptop. And Dante? Don't forward those emails to anyone else. Don't let them know you have them." "Already ahead of you," Dante replied. "Sierra's got recordings too. Multiple witnesses ready to talk." "Good," Nia said. "We'll need everything. These small-town power structures, they're like fortresses. But they all have weak points if you know where to look." An hour later, Nia sat at Dante's kitchen table, her laptop open as she read through the email chain. Her expression grew darker with each message. "This is gold, Dante," she said finally, looking up. "But it's just the beginning. That Anderson case they mentioned? I remember hearing whispers, but the family wouldn't talk to anyone. If we can find them..." "How do we play this?" Dante asked, sliding a cup of coffee across the table to her. Nia took a sip, her reporter's mind already mapping out angles. "We go slow, quiet. Build the case first. I'll start digging into property records, school board minutes, transfer patterns. See who else left town suddenly. Follow the paper trail." She set down her cup, meeting Dante's steady gaze. "This isn't just about Sierra anymore. You know that, right?" "I know," Dante nodded. "That's why I called you. These people need to be exposed. All of them." "It won't be easy," Nia warned. "Sheriff's got friends in high places. School board's probably in on it too." "When has that ever stopped us?" Dante asked, the ghost of a smile crossing his face. Nia matched his expression, remembering other missions, other fights. "Never has. Never will." She turned back to her laptop, fingers flying over the keys. "Let's get to work." Sierra walked through Ridgeview's main entrance, her head held high despite the whispers that followed her like shadows. 3 days of suspension hadn't changed much, except maybe made the stares a little bolder, the whispers a little louder. "There's the karate girl," someone muttered. "Heard she almost killed Chase," another voice added. Sierra kept walking, the tiny microphone clipped inside her collar capturing everything. Her dad's training echoed in her mind. Let them talk. Every word they say is evidence. At her locker, she noticed something different. 2 black students from her English class gave her subtle nods as they passed. A Latino boy she'd never spoken to made eye contact and touched his fist to his heart. Small gestures, but they carried weight. During second period, a folded note landed on her desk. Sierra opened it carefully, ready for another threat. Instead, she found neat handwriting. "Thank you for standing up to them. Malik." She glanced across the room. Malik Jones sat 3 rows over, quickly looking down when she caught his eye. She'd seen him before, always alone, always quiet, always trying to make himself smaller when Troy and his friends were around. At lunch, Sierra didn't head to her usual isolated corner. Instead, she walked purposefully toward Malik's empty table. He looked up, startled, as she sat down. "Hi," she said softly, keeping her voice casual. "Mind if I join you?" Malik shook his head, his sandwich forgotten. They didn't really hurt you, did they? In the gym?" "No," Sierra replied, unpacking her lunch. "But they tried." "And that's not okay." Malik glanced around nervously before leaning closer. "They've done stuff to me, too. Since last year. Nothing as bad as what they did to you. But..." Sierra reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object. Another clip-on microphone, identical to the one she wore. She slid it across the table like passing a note. "Tell your story," she said quietly. "My dad's collecting evidence. We've got someone looking into everything." Malik stared at the mic like it might bite him. "I don't know." "You don't have to decide now," Sierra assured him. "But think about this. How many others are there? How many left because nobody stood up?" She saw something shift in Malik's eyes, a spark of anger breaking through the fear. He picked up the mic with trembling fingers. "What do I say?" he whispered. "Everything," Sierra answered. "Start from the beginning. When you're ready, press the button once to record. Press twice to stop." Throughout the rest of lunch, they talked about normal things, classes, music, the cafeteria's mystery meat. But Sierra noticed Malik's hand kept touching his pocket, where the mic was hidden, like he was gathering courage. After school, Sierra found a small package in her locker. Inside was Malik's mic and a note. "I recorded everything. There's more of us who want to talk. Thank you." That evening, Sierra sat with her father in his office, both wearing headphones as they listened to Malik's testimony. His voice shook at first, but grew stronger as he spoke. "It started last September." Malik's recording began. "Troy and his friends cornered me in the bathroom, said I didn't belong here, said their dads owned this town. They heard about accidental shoulder checks that left bruises, threats whispered between classes, money stolen from his locker, teachers who looked the other way. Last month," Malik continued, "they followed me home, said if I told anyone, they'd make sure my mom lost her job at the hospital. Sheriff Hadley's wife is on the hospital board." Sierra watched her father's face as they listened. His expression remained calm, but she recognized the slight tightening around his eyes, the look he got when planning something important. More recordings followed Malik's, short snippets from other students who'd seen him talking to Sierra. A girl describing racial slurs written on her gym clothes. A boy talking about being threatened with false drug charges. "This is more than we thought," Dante said finally, removing his headphones. "Way more." Sierra nodded, her throat tight with anger and determination. "They're all scared, but they're starting to talk. Because you showed them it was possible," Dante replied. He began organizing the audio files on his computer, labeling each one carefully. "Each story is a brick. We're building something they can't ignore." Sierra thought about Malik's trembling hands, about the nods in the hallway, about all the silent stories waiting to be told. "How many bricks do we need?" "As many as it takes," Dante answered, his fingers moving steadily over the keyboard. "The truth is like water. It finds every crack, every weakness. And once it starts flowing..." He trailed off as another audio file began uploading. Another student's story, another piece of evidence, another brick in the wall of truth they were building, slowly but surely, against those who thought their power made them untouchable. Nia Reynolds sat across from Sierra in a dimly lit studio, adjusting the lighting to keep her young source in shadow. Sierra's silhouette was barely visible against the dark backdrop, but her voice came through clear and strong. "They hung a noose on my locker," Sierra said steadily. "And when I defended myself, they suspended me instead of the attackers." Naya nodded. her professional demeanor masking her anger. And how did the school administration respond to the Noose incident? They called it a prank, gave the boys 1 day of in-school suspension, told me to take the high road. The interview aired that evening at 6, leading into Nia's full investigative report. The headline flashed across screens throughout the city. Noose at Ridgeview. School protects bullies. Silences black girl. Sierra and Dante watched from their living room as Nia methodically laid out the evidence. Carefully edited audio clips from multiple students played over stock footage of Ridgeview's pristine campus. Each testimony built on the last, revealing a pattern of harassment and institutional protection. Sources confirm that one of the accused students is the son of Sheriff Nolan Hadley, Nia's voice stated. Internal emails suggest coordination between school officials and law enforcement to minimize these incidents. Sierra's phone started buzzing with text messages. First from Malik. "You did it. You really did it." Then others from students she'd never spoken to. "Thank you. Stay strong. We're with you." But not all reactions were supportive. On local social media, parents from Ridgeview started posting angry defenses. "These allegations are destroying our school's reputation. My child says it's all exaggerated. This girl is causing trouble for attention." By morning, the story had exploded. News vans lined up outside Ridgeview. Principal Whitaker sent out a mass email defending the school's commitment to diversity, while condemning those who seek to divide us. In first period, Sierra noticed empty seats where Troy, Chase, and Ryder usually sat. Their parents had kept them home. Other students whispered and stared, but differently now, some with admiration, others with barely concealed hostility. During lunch, Madison, the girl who'd set up Sierra for humiliation weeks ago, approached her table. "My dad's on the school board," Madison said, her voice shaking slightly. "He's really mad about the story. They're having an emergency meeting tonight." Sierra kept her expression neutral. "Thank you for telling me. Madison hesitated. "I should have said something before. About what they did to you. I'm sorry." Before Sierra could respond, her phone buzzed. It was Nia. "Board meeting tonight, 7 p.m. They're discussing your case. Bring your father." That evening, Sierra and Dante arrived at the district office to find the parking lot packed. Parents, students, and community members filled the meeting room. Sheriff Hadley stood near the front, his uniform pristine, his face tight with controlled anger. Board President Richard Dunham, Chase's father, called the meeting to order. "We're here to address serious concerns about student safety and social disruption at Ridgeview Middle School." Sierra felt her stomach tighten. The way he said student safety made it clear whose safety he meant. "Recent media coverage has painted our school in a false light," Dunham continued. "We have evidence that certain individuals have deliberately provoked racial tensions for personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Dante's hand found Sierra's shoulder, steady and strong. "The board has reviewed security footage, student statements, and disciplinary records," Dunham announced. "We're considering appropriate actions, including the possible expulsion of students whose behavior threatens the harmony of our school community." Sierra heard gasps and angry mutters. Nia, sitting 2 rows ahead, was scribbling furiously in her notebook. "This is not about punishment," Dunham said, though his eyes fixed directly on Sierra. "This is about maintaining order and preventing division. We cannot allow disruptive influences to tear apart our school family." Sheriff Hadley stepped forward. "As a law enforcement officer and concerned parent, I support the board's commitment to safety. Those who make false accusations and incite unrest must face consequences." Sierra sat perfectly still, her father's training keeping her breathing steady. She watched as hands shot up around the room, parents eager to speak, to defend their version of peace. The board secretary began reading a proposal. Due to ongoing disruption of school activities, promotion of social discord, and violation of conduct policies, the board will vote on the immediate expulsion of Sierra Carter. Phones came out across the room as parents recorded the proceedings. Sierra knew tomorrow would bring more headlines, more anger, more division, but she remained seated, poised and dignified, just as her father had taught her. Because this wasn't the end. It was exactly what they'd expected. The system trying to protect itself by silencing the truth. And like her father always said, let them show their true faces. Let them think they're winning. That's when they make mistakes. The Carters drove home in silence after the board meeting, streetlights casting intermittent shadows across their faces. Sierra stared out the window, her mind replaying the board's threats of expulsion. Dante kept his eyes on the road, his military training evident in his controlled demeanor. Their headlights swept across their front yard as they pulled into the driveway. Everything looked normal until they reached the porch. Glass crunched under their feet. "Stay back," Dante said quietly, moving in front of Sierra. Their front window was shattered, shards glinting in the porch light. A brick lay on their living room floor, surrounded by a spray pattern of broken glass. A piece of paper was wrapped around it, secured with a rubber band. Dante pulled out his phone and started taking pictures, methodically documenting everything before touching the scene. He'd learned evidence collection during his SEAL training, and those habits died hard. "Call 911, he told Sierra, his voice steady. "Then wait in the car." Sierra dialed but stayed on the porch. She wasn't leaving her father alone. "Emergency services," the dispatcher said. "Someone threw a brick through our window," Sierra reported calmly. 3487 Oak Ridge Drive. While they waited for police, Dante carefully retrieved the brick using a kitchen towel. He unwrapped the note, his jaw tightening as he read it. "You brought this on yourself. Leave." 20 minutes later, a single patrol car pulled up without lights or sirens. Deputy Roberts stepped out, looking bored. Sierra recognized him from school events. He was one of Sheriff Hadley's closest friends. "Evening," Roberts said, barely glancing at the window. "Got a report of vandalism?" "Attempted intimidation," Dante corrected, holding up the bagged brick and note. "We'd like to file a formal complaint." Roberts took minimal notes, didn't photograph anything, and made no effort to look for evidence. Probably just kids playing pranks. "Area's been real peaceful before recently." The implied accusation hung in the air. Sierra felt her father's energy shift. Not angry, but focused, like during their most intense training sessions. "Deputy," Dante said quietly, "I want your badge number and a case number. Now." Roberts straightened, finally meeting Dante's eyes. Something in the former SEAL's stance made him reach for his notepad. "I'll file the report," Roberts said stiffly. "But with no witnesses or cameras, not much we can do." "There are cameras," Sierra spoke up. Everyone turned to look at her. She pointed to their neighbor's house. "Mrs. Chen has a doorbell camera. It faces our front yard." Roberts frowned. "I'll make a note of it." "We'll also need the name of your evidence technician," Dante added. "Look," Roberts said, "Sheriff Hadley's department is stretched thin. We can't spare resources for every little vandalism case." "Of course not," Dante replied. "That's why I'm also calling the FBI Civil Rights Division. Intimidation following racial harassment falls under their jurisdiction." Roberts's face darkened. "That's unnecessary. We can handle local matters locally." "Like you handled the Noose at school?" Sierra asked quietly. The deputy turned to leave. "I'll submit my report. Clean this up before someone gets hurt." After his patrol car disappeared, Sierra helped her father board up the window. They worked efficiently, the skills Dante had taught her making the task almost mechanical. "They're scared," Sierra said as she held the board steady. "Good," Dante replied, drilling in another screw. Scared people make mistakes. Inside, they swept up glass while stepping carefully. Sierra noticed her father examining the brick's trajectory, the angle of impact, the spray pattern of glass. "You're gathering intelligence," she observed. Dante nodded. "Always. Just like I taught you. The cameras might have caught something. Maybe. But that's not what matters most." He stood up straight. "What matters is they showed their hand. Threats, intimidation, corrupt police response. It's all documented now." Sierra understood. Every reaction revealed their opponent's character, their methods, their weaknesses. It was like sparring. You learned more from how someone attacked than from their words. They finished cleaning in silence. The boarded window made the room feel darker, but neither of them turned on more lights. They were comfortable in shadow. Later that night, Sierra couldn't sleep. She went down to their garage dojo, the familiar space where she'd trained since childhood. The walls held photos of her father's SEAL team, her karate tournaments, their family through years of discipline and growth. She was standing there when Dante found her. He didn't speak, just moved beside her, both of them facing the wall of memories. "We don't run," Sierra said finally, her voice firm. Dante nodded. "Then we finish this, all the way." The Carters' kitchen table disappeared under stacks of papers and notebooks. Malik Jones sat nervously at one end, his hands wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate that Sierra had made him. His mother, Patricia, sat beside him, her face tight with worry and anger. "Take your time," Dante said quietly. His recorder sat in the middle of the table, its red light blinking. "Just tell us what happened." Malik's voice shook at first. "It started last year. Troy and his friends would follow me to my locker. They'd whisper things like monkey when teachers weren't around." He paused, looking at his mother. "I didn't tell you because I thought it would make things worse." Patricia squeezed his hand. "Baby, you should have told me. They said if I snitched, they'd make sure I got expelled," Malik continued. "Said their dads would make it happen." Sierra wrote everything down while Dante recorded. They'd been doing this for 3 days now, gathering statements, building their case piece by piece. "Did you ever report it?" Dante asked. "Once," Malik said. "To Mr. Whitaker. He said, without proof, he couldn't do anything. But I saw him laughing with Troy's dad at the school fundraiser that weekend." The doorbell rang. Sierra went to answer it, checking through the peephole first, a new habit since the brick incident. 3 more students stood outside with their parents. Word had spread quietly through the school's minority community. The Carters were fighting back. By evening, they had 7 statements. Each story followed the same pattern: harassment, threats, administrative indifference. Some parents cried while their children spoke. Others sat in stone-faced anger. "This goes back years," Patricia Jones said, looking through the statements. "How did we let this happen?" "Fear," Dante replied. "They made everyone feel alone. But not anymore." Sierra's phone buzzed. A text from Layla Norris, the civil rights attorney they'd contacted. She was on her way. Layla arrived precisely on time, her briefcase well-worn but professional. She had handled discrimination cases across 3 states, building a reputation for turning systemic failures into lasting change. "This is exactly what we need," she said, reviewing the statements. "Pattern and practice. Shows it's not isolated incidents." She spread documents across the table where the family's statements had been. The school board's trying to rush Sierra's expulsion hearing. They want it done before we can organize. "Can they do that?" Sierra asked. "They can try," Layla smiled. "But they don't know what's coming." She pulled out more papers: legal motions, precedent cases, civil rights statutes. "First, we file for an emergency injunction to block the expulsion. That buys us time. Then, We demand an outside investigation into the district's handling of racial complaints. The sheriff's department will fight it, Dante noted. Let them, Layla replied. Every time they resist, they prove our point. Sierra watched Layla work, admiring her calm precision. It reminded her of her father planning missions, seeing 3 moves ahead, turning opponents' strength against them. We'll need more than statements, Layla continued. Photos, videos, emails, anything showing how they handled or mishandled complaints. I have the recordings, Sierra said, pulling out her phone. She'd kept the microphone running through classes, capturing casual threats and slurs. Perfect. And the security footage from your assault? The school claims it was accidentally deleted, Dante said. Layla made a note. Convenient. We'll add spoliation of evidence to the complaint. She worked late into the night, her fingers flying over her laptop keyboard. The Carters brought her coffee while she transformed their kitchen into a legal war room. Around midnight, she sat back. It's ready. 57 pages documenting years of systematic discrimination, with exhibits. The motion for emergency injunction cites 14 federal cases and 8 civil rights statutes. She handed them the final page. I need both your signatures. Once we file this, there's no going back. They'll fight dirty. Sierra signed without hesitation. Dante followed, his signature as precise as his martial arts forms. What happens next? Sierra asked. Tomorrow morning, I'll file this with the federal court, Layla explained. By afternoon, the school board will be served. They'll have 48 hours to respond before the first hearing. She packed her briefcase, organizing everything with military efficiency. The law is on our side, but more importantly, the truth is on our side. They've gotten away with this because everyone was afraid to fight back. Standing at the door, Layla turned to Sierra. You're not just fighting for yourself anymore. You're fighting for every student who came before you, and everyone who'll come after. Sierra nodded, feeling the weight of that responsibility. But it didn't feel heavy. It felt like purpose. After Layla left, Dante and Sierra sat in their living room, the boarded-up window a reminder of what they faced. You ready for this? Dante asked. Sierra thought about Malik's shaking voice, the parents' tears, the years of silence and fear. They thought the noose would scare us, she said. Instead, it woke everyone up. The next morning, Sierra's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages poured in from numbers she didn't recognize. She handed it to her father, overwhelmed. It's everywhere, Dante said, scrolling through notifications. Someone leaked the hallway video. They watched it together on the living room TV. The footage was grainy but clear. Sierra walking from gym class, Troy and his friends surrounding her. The basketball flying at her head. Her calm dodge. Chase grabbing her wrist. Then the swift, controlled takedown that had gotten her suspended. The timestamp, Dante pointed out, and the angle. This came from the security cameras they claimed were erased. Sierra's phone rang. Layla Norris. Have you seen it? The attorney asked without preamble. This changes everything. The school lied about the footage being deleted. That's evidence tampering. Outside their house, car horns honked in support. A small group had gathered on the sidewalk, holding signs, Stand with Sierra and End Racism at Ridgeview. The local news vans arrived within the hour. Nia Reynolds was first on scene, her cameraman capturing the growing crowd. Sources inside Ridgeview High School leaked security footage this morning, she reported, clearly showing Sierra Carter acting in self-defense after being physically assaulted by 3 male students. The school had previously claimed this footage was accidentally deleted. Sierra watched from behind the curtains as more people arrived. Students she recognized, parents, even teachers, though they stayed in their cars, watching from a distance. Her social media exploded with friend requests and messages. But what caught her attention was the hashtag trending locally. Ridgeview Truth. "Look at this," she called to her father. Former students were sharing their stories. 2018, they vandalized my locker with racial slurs. Principal Whitaker called it a prank. Ridgeview Truth. Troy's dad threatened to arrest my brother if I reported the harassment. We transferred schools. Ridgeview Truth. I was there when they cornered that Hispanic kid behind the gym. Teachers saw it, did nothing. Ridgeview Truth. The stories kept coming. Years of buried pain and silence bubbling to the surface. Dante's phone rang. Principal Whitaker. He put it on speaker. "Mr. Carter." Whitaker's voice was strained. "In light of new evidence, we'd like to discuss dropping the expulsion proceedings." "Save it for the hearing," Dante cut him off. "Everything goes on record now." By noon, the crowd outside Ridgeview Middle School had grown to hundreds. Students walked out of classes, joining the protesters. Local news crews interviewed former students who'd driven from neighboring cities to share their stories. Sierra watched it all unfold on TV, feeling strange seeing her name in the headlines. The security footage played on repeat. Her calm face, her controlled response, the clear evidence of who started it. "Sierra," her father called from his office. "You need to see this." He turned his laptop screen. Someone had sent him screenshots from a private Instagram group chat. The messages were from 3 months ago, right after she started school. Troy, "New girl thinks she's too good for us." Chase, stuck up. Troy, "Gonna teach her about ropes tomorrow." Ryder, "You're crazy, man." Troy, "Dad says these people only learn the hard way. Putting that rope on her locker will show her." The messages continued, growing more explicit. The sender was anonymous, the account name simply Truth Teller. But the profile picture showed a Ridgeview football jersey. "One of their own teammates," Sierra said quietly. Dante forwarded the screenshots to Layla. Within minutes, she called back. "This is direct evidence," she said. "Premeditated hate crime. The sheriff can't ignore this. It's his son admitting to it in writing." Sierra sat back, processing everything. The video, the stories, the messages, all the hidden truths coming to light at once. She thought about that morning at her locker, seeing the noose. How alone she'd felt. Now, hundreds of people stood outside in the rain, holding signs with her name. Years of silence were breaking. The system that protected bullies was cracking. Her father touched her shoulder. "You okay?" Sierra nodded. "They thought that noose would scare everyone into staying quiet," she said. But it did the opposite. Through the window, they could hear the crowd chanting, "No more silence, no more fear." The truth was finally speaking louder than fear. The morning news showed Principal Whitaker walking to his car, ignoring reporters' questions. His resignation letter had leaked overnight. 2 paragraphs of corporate speak about pursuing other opportunities and spending time with family. Sierra watched from her kitchen table, eating breakfast before school. The Department of Education's investigation team had arrived yesterday, taking over the main conference room. Their presence sent ripples through the hallways. 3 federal investigators, Dante said, reading the morning paper. They're going through every complaint filed in the last 5 years. Sierra's phone buzzed. A text from Malik. "Principal's gone. Teachers acting different already." She'd noticed it too. Yesterday, her English teacher had finally moved her away from Troy's group without being asked. The gym teacher who'd blamed her for the hallway incident couldn't meet her eyes. The school board called an emergency press conference for that afternoon. Sierra and Dante watched it live from Layla's office. Board President Margaret Chen looked uncomfortable at the podium. After reviewing extensive evidence, we acknowledge systematic failures in addressing racial harassment at Ridgeview Middle School. We apologize to the students and families who were silenced or dismissed. Behind her, other board members shifted nervously as she continued. We have uncovered multiple instances where complaints were buried or minimized. This pattern of negligence ends today. Layla made notes, circling key phrases. "They're trying to get ahead of the department's findings," she said. "Watch, they'll start throwing people under the bus." She was right. The board announced a complete overhaul of disciplinary procedures. They suspended 2 administrators who had helped cover up previous incidents. They promised sensitivity training, diversity initiatives, anonymous reporting systems. "Too little, too late," Dante muttered. The federal investigators worked methodically. They interviewed students, parents, and staff. They reviewed emails, security footage, disciplinary records. Each day brought new revelations. Troy, Chase, and Ryder stayed home. Voluntarily, their parents said. But everyone knew they were hiding from the cameras and trying to avoid more incriminating statements. A week into the investigation, the team called Sierra in for her official statement. She brought the recordings, the screenshots, her detailed notes of every incident. The lead investigator, Dr. Williams, listened carefully. "You showed remarkable restraint," she said, reviewing the hallway footage again. "Most students would have reacted much earlier." "My father taught me control," Sierra replied, "and patience." That afternoon, the investigation team interviewed Troy separately. Through the office windows, Sierra saw him leaving, red-faced, angry, his father the sheriff right behind him. They hurried to their car as reporters shouted questions. The next morning, the department released its preliminary findings. The evidence was damning. The school board had no choice. They called another press conference, this time to announce the expulsions. Board President Chen read from a prepared statement. Based on conclusive evidence of coordinated racial harassment, culminating in a hate crime involving a noose, Troy Hadley, Chase Dunham, and Ryder Keene are permanently expelled from Ridgeview Middle School. Their actions violated multiple federal civil rights laws. In the back of the room, Sheriff Hadley stormed out. Chase's father, the board trustee, had already resigned last week. Ryder's parents hadn't been seen in public since the Instagram messages leaked. The halls felt different that afternoon. Students who had laughed at the noose now looked away when Sierra passed. Those who had stayed silent started speaking up about other incidents they'd witnessed. Madison, the girl who had set up Sierra at lunch that first week, approached her between classes. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I knew it was wrong, but I was scared of them too." Sierra nodded but kept walking. Some apologies came too late. In the cafeteria, Malik sat with her now. Other students gradually joined their table, mostly minorities who had kept to themselves before, but also a few white students who had finally found their courage. "They thought that noose would scare us," Malik said. "Instead, it woke everyone up." Sierra looked around the cafeteria. The old social barriers were breaking down. Students who had never interacted were talking, sharing stories, finally seeing each other. The department's investigation continued, expanding to other schools in the district. But at Ridgeview, change was already happening. The truth had broken through the silence, and nothing could push it back down. The Youth Summit's main hall buzzed with energy. Hundreds of students from across the state filled the rows of seats, many wearing "Stand Against Hate" t-shirts. Banners promoting unity and justice hung from the walls. Sierra sat backstage, adjusting her blazer, the new one Dante had bought her for the occasion. Her hands weren't shaking, but her heart beat faster than usual. She touched the small karate medallion hanging from her neck, a gift from her first tournament victory. 5 minutes, the event coordinator said, poking her head in. Dante stood in the corner, watching his daughter prepare. "Remember," he said quietly, "just speak your truth." Sierra nodded. She'd practiced her speech for days, but now the words felt different. Real. Heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. The moderator's voice boomed through the speakers. Our next speaker showed us that sometimes the strongest response to hate is calm determination. Please welcome Sierra Carter. Applause filled the hall as Sierra walked to the podium. Camera flashes popped. In the front row, she saw Malik and some other Ridgeview students. Layla Norris sat near the back, next to Nia Reynolds, who had her reporter's notebook ready. Sierra took a deep breath and began. 3 months ago, someone hung a noose on my locker, she said. The room went silent. They thought it would break me, make me run, make me afraid. She paused, looking across the sea of faces. Instead, it made me stronger. She told the story, not just of the noose, but of the daily harassment, the dismissals, the cover-ups. She described the system that protected bullies and silenced victims. But mostly, she talked about resistance. We didn't fight with fists, she continued. We fought with facts, with truth, and with dignity. And we won. Her voice grew stronger. Not just for me, but for every student who was ever told to take the high road while bullies walked free. For every kid who was told that speaking up would only make things worse. The audience leaned forward as she described how they gathered evidence, built alliances, and exposed the truth. How they refused to be baited into violence or sink to the level of their attackers. My father taught me that true strength isn't about hurting others, she said, glancing at Dante. It's about standing your ground while keeping your dignity. It's about fighting smart, not angry. When she finished, the applause was deafening. Students stood, many wiping tears. Some held up phones, live streaming the moment. The moderator had to wait several minutes before calling the next speaker. Backstage, Dante hugged her tight. "Proud of you, baby girl," he whispered. The rest of the summit passed in a blur of workshops, panels, and conversations. Sierra met students from other schools facing similar battles. They exchanged numbers, promised to stay in touch, to support each other's fights. That evening, Sierra and Dante sat at their favorite pizza place, sharing a large pepperoni and mushroom. The TV above the bar showed a news update about the Department of Education's expanding investigation. "Did you hear about Troy?" Sierra asked, reaching for another slice. Dante nodded grimly. "Sheriff Hadley resigned this morning. Federal investigation into his conduct was too much pressure. Chase's family is moving," Sierra added. "Malik said they're selling their house. His dad lost his position at the investment firm after those racist emails leaked. And Ryder? No private school will take him. His dad's development company lost 3 major contracts when the story went national. They're talking bankruptcy." They ate in silence for a moment, letting it sink in. The bullies' actions had destroyed not just their own futures, but their families standing in the community. "Do you feel bad for them?" Dante asked carefully. Sierra considered the question. "No," she said finally. "They chose hate. They chose cruelty. They thought their parents' power made them untouchable." She took a sip of her soda. "They never imagined their actions would have real consequences. Because they never had to face consequences before," Dante added. "Exactly." Sierra watched the news footage showing Sheriff Hadley's resignation. "They thought that noose would scare me into silence. Instead, it gave us the weapon we needed. Proof of their hate, proof of the cover-up, proof that the system was broken." A text buzzed on her phone, another student from the summit, asking for advice about documenting racism at their school. Sierra smiled slightly as she typed a response. "The fight's not over, is it?" she said, looking up at her father. "No," Dante replied. "But now they know we're ready. And we're not alone." Outside the pizza place, the early evening sky was turning purple. Cars passed on the street, life going on as normal. But nothing was really normal anymore. Everything had changed. The school, the community, and most of all, Sierra herself. She wasn't just the quiet girl anymore. She was the girl who stood her ground. who fought with truth instead of fists, who helped bring down a system of protected hatred. The girl who turned a noose into a catalyst for change. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.